Today I am grinning from ear to ear because today we're going to have a no holds barred talk between two on fire mediums. I just found a new soul sister. Her name is Rose Oletta. She is a gifted oracle, a seer, and spiritual medium. She's had classical training as a medium, as have I. Her training came from Alcalade Academy in the UK. I trained at Arthur Findlay. She trained at Alcalade. Both of them are extremely vigilant about the quality of education that they afford their students. And Rose, I am just so excited to have you. Welcome on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. Usually I skip the routine questions like, so how did you become a psychic medium? Because many people share a similar trajectory. But I think in your case, you've got a unique story to share with us. So let's start there.
Yeah, mine is a bit different. Well, I started out, as a child being very intuitive. I'm a Pisces, so I've had lots of kind of psychic experiences along the way, as I think a lot of people have.
Mhm.
But my story really begins in 2012. And for all the astrology buffs out there, that was during a time of some Pluto-Uranus squares, which is, life shifting. It's where it's kind of shaking everything up to put you on your path. And I had a dream that said that I needed to move to Colorado. And this was right before the whole December 2012 Mayan prophecy thing. So, I took this dream fairly seriously. And at the time I was married and convinced my husband that we needed to move to Colorado. I didn't know why, but I knew that I was being guided and it was important. And so we ended up going to Colorado, and through a series of events, I was led to the people who ran Accolade Academy and to a psychic development group.
Tell us a little bit about Alcalade Academy, too. I'm familiar with Arthur Findlay because that's where I went, but I know it's in the UK. Other than that,
it's world acclaimed. It's ran out of Wales by a husband and wife team who are phenomenal. And they are trained in the traditional spiritualist movement of mediums, which pushes evidential mediumship,
yes,
which means that I have to be very, very specific with the things I come through to know without a shadow of a doubt that it's their loved one that they're communicating with. So they really, really push for integrity and for evidence. And so during that time, I was going through a really difficult marriage. I had 4 very young children. My husband at the time was laid off. We didn't have any source of income. The marriage was really, really difficult in every way possible. And I was at a very low point in my life where I was literally praying to die. I had children, so I obviously, didn't want to do anything drastic, but I didn't see any hope. I didn't see any way out of my situation. Mm. And during that time, I felt very alone. It was very dark days for me. And I was led to a series of people who eventually led me to this woman who does past life regressions. In fact, I believe you did a show with her a few weeks ago. That would be Amira.
Yes, Amira
of the Merworld.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes,
so at the time, I didn't know her. And at the time, I was living in Colorado. But I saw her on YouTube. And every ounce of me knew I had to have a session with her. Now, I'd had past life regressions with very well-known regressionists, so that wasn't really what I was needing, but something within me just was forcing me to contact her. So I contacted her, and it turns out she lived in the town that I graduated high school from. So we all had all these kind of serendipities happening right away. And during the session, she leads me through regression. And it shows me back in the days of the biblical days. And I was a man who was watching over a herd of sheep. And I was communicating with the stars. So I was channeling. Mm. And at this time, I didn't really understand what that word really meant. All of a sudden, my guide started speaking through me. And I started channeling during our session, talking directly to Amira. Oh, and so I'm kind of watching this third person as my guides are talking to her. And they tell her that I'm here to become an oracle and a trance channel. And she happened to know a trance channel at the time who was going through her own awakening, just discovered she was a trance channel. And she asked my guides if I was supposed to connect with that woman. And they said yes. So I come out of this session just totally shaken because I had no idea what just happened. All of a sudden a being started talking through me.
Right.
And
right.
I didn't even know what a trance channel was at the time.
Yeah. For some of our listeners, they might not know. So go ahead. We'll talk about Oracle later, but tell them how you interpret trance channel.
So a trance channel is when you allow your vessel, your physical body, to become a medium for a higher guide or spirit to speak through. So then that's what happened. My spirit guides used my physical body, my vocal cords, to speak directly and have a physical conversation with the regressionist at the time.
Yeah,
So,
and I want to differentiate that for our listeners from possession, which
yes.
is a lower vibrational entity that takes advantage of someone's poor boundaries, poor psychic boundaries, or openness because of drugs or alcohol or something like that, and has a malevolent intent. Channeling or trance channeling would be a yielding, even if you didn't understand it at an intellectual level physically, but it allows a higher vibrational being to bring through messages of comfort and counsel. I just wanted to
Absolutely.
point that out.
And that's a huge difference. And I definitely, in my own practice and my own teachings, explain discernment to people and understanding those differences.
Yes.
In my case, this was my soul's mission and purpose. So I was very divinely protected.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though I didn't consciously or physically understand what was happening to me
Sure.
yet. So she ended up connecting me with the woman who was becoming a trance channel. She at this time didn't even have an official practice. So when I contacted her, I mailed her a check for payment, but I forgot to put a stamp on the envelope. 5 days later, she contacts me and said, "You're never going to believe this." She said, "I just received an envelope from you and there's no stamp on it." And this woman also happened to live in the town where I had graduated high school from. And here I am, I had just moved away to Colorado. So all these serendipities again. And
I
of course,
love how that works.
yeah. And, in this day and age, what letter makes it without a stamp? So it was definitely spirit behind all of this. And that was a big clue to her that there was something very important happening here. So I went ahead and did the session with her, not ever understanding what was going to happen. And, they'd kind of explained to me that my guide would come through and speak to her. And, I had played around with angel cards before, and I had some understanding of, how psychic phenomena work. So I was just expecting the angels to come through and say, "You're a beautiful person and we love you."
Yes, yeah. Something kind of
and that's not,
Yes.
and that's not what happened at all. In fact, I had an ascended master come through, who some of your listeners might be familiar with, Ganesh. And Ganesh,
yes, I work with Ganesh too.
yeah, I love it. I've come to know him and really love him. But at the
Yes.
time, I didn't know him anything more than that elephant statue in the Indian restaurants.
Right, right, yes.
And so he came to me and he said, the very first thing he said to me is, "All those days and nights where you sat crying and thought you were alone, we were here with you. You were never alone." And that was very powerful to me because I had felt so alone. And he explained to me what my path was, that I was here to become an oracle and a medium. And at the time, I didn't know what either of those words meant. And he said, "There will be no more teachers on this earth for you. Your teachers will be spirit from now on."
Yes.
And he gave me a series of exercises to do and things I needed to do to prepare my body, both physically and mentally, to receive messages from spirit. And I followed that path. And it's been several years now of me really following the guidance of spirit and connecting solely to spirit. And it's what put me on my path.
What were some of the things that you were advised? And I know part of it would be personal to you personally, but also maybe some things that other people could do to help clarify their energies.
Yeah. So my path, and as many, many, many people at this time in our earth, is the path of the wounded healer. So that means the reason why I was born into this world with no memory of who I was or what I was to do was because I had to go through a lot of hardships. I had to go through a very difficult childhood, a very difficult marriage, very difficult life, lots of traumas, because I needed to experience all of those things.
Yes.
But once you reach that level of where now it's time to do something with those lessons, you need to clear it.
Yes.
And so that was the very first thing I had to do. And so he led me through a series of, I like to call them ceremonies, where there was a physical aspect to it, because even though we carry spirit within us, we're in a physical body.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so it's important to address both the spiritual and the physical. So he led me through a series of 7 weeks of ceremonial baths. And in these baths, I was to think about all of the traumas I had ever gone through, all of these experiences. And I was asked to go to that place within my mind of remembrance of these experiences and cry it out, and then get to a place of forgiveness for the people and for myself in these situations.
Love
And
to let go.
yes, and let it go and really cry it out. I think a lot of us, especially if you've gone through a lot of hardships, you have to be strong, right? And so you're taught to kind of hold everything in. And so that's what I had been doing. It had been affecting my physical
Yes.
health. It had been affecting me emotionally. It had been stunting me. And so it was really time for me to let all those things go. Now, as I told you in the beginning of my story, I'd been praying to die every day. And now looking back, I can see that in a way I did die.
Yes, like a
And
rebirth. Yes,
yeah, it really
absolutely.
was a rebirth for me. And in my situation, I actually became a walk-in. And this is something maybe some of your listeners have heard of before. I had heard of it before, but never in my life had I considered that this would happen to me.
Go
But
ahead
this,
and describe to them. I could do it, but I want you to
sure.
put it in your words because it was your experience.
Yeah, and it happens differently for every person. Not every walk-in has the same type of experience or situation. But basically, what that means is that one soul or aspect of your soul exits your physical body, transcends, just like somebody would do in an actual physical death. They go on to the other realms, to the other dimensions, and another soul or spirit comes and takes over that vessel. Now, this is something agreed upon long before, and this is an agreement between the souls. It's different from possession or these other type of things. This is
Yes,
just
yes.
part of the soul's plan. So in my experience, my soul was named Rachel. She had gone through a long life of a lot of hardships and a lot of pain, and it was time for her to get respite. It was time, her growth and healing had been done. And my higher self, which is my spirit, stepped into my body. And that spirit's name was Oletta. And that was the name that God gave to my spirit when he created it, which means a rose with no thorns. So that was when my spirit guides explained the story to me and explained that at this time, it would be wise for me to now change my name legally and officially to Rose Oletta, because now I was that spirit.
Oh, that is so interesting. I wasn't aware of exactly the same process, but I came to a point in life where I was advised by different people, like psychics and numerologists and
Yeah,
everyone, to change my name. And I shifted from Robin to Tracy. And
that's
and
fascinating.
and
Yeah.
like I'm sure that if somebody looked at me, they wouldn't necessarily resonate unless they knew me from before with that name. You know, I feel like Tracy is my name, and you are definitely Oletta. I can't even
Yes.
see a trace of Rachel in
It's
there.
like two different people. It really is. And there, there's
Yes.
a transition time, and people ask me a lot of questions about that. I still retain all the memories that, for the most part, that Rachel went through, but it's a completely different energy. It's a completely different person. My path now as Oletta is one of unconditional love, both for myself, because that's where love really begins,
Yes.
and extending that outwards to the world. And that's what I'm here to do.
Oh, this is so cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. I know I had somebody ask me, "Are you a walk-in?" And I'm like, "What? No, I'm not."
Well, and a
But
lot
now
of
I
times,
need to think about that because my vibration is quite different, and it is that sense of looking back, and you can identify and recall and relate to it, but it doesn't own
yeah.
you or possess you or keep you. And it's almost like looking at a past life. I've often thought of it like that.
Yes. And in this time, we're in a time of great shifts on our planet. So this is happening for a lot of people, especially people who carry the path of the wounded healer, where they'll come in with an aspect of their soul. And we'll get into the spirit and soul in a moment, but an aspect of the soul comes in. But then when it's time for you to start your kind of healing work for this planet and your mission that God has asked you to do for this planet, your higher self will come in. And that's why we have a lot of walk-ins happening right now where their higher self is coming in fully present into the physical body versus just an aspect of their soul.
Oh, very cool. There, that explains a lot. Like I said, going to have to think on it for me
Yeah.
personally, and I'm sure some of our listeners as well, because there are a lot of us sensitives that have had an interesting path getting where we are.
Definitely. I understand that.
Wow, Oletta, that's awesome. Do you go
Thank
by
you.
your first name,
So the
Oletta?
way I've done it,
It's
Spirit always calls me Rose or Oletta when Spirit comes through to speak. which I didn't even get into all the physical things that have happened, which is, really cool with spirit coming and appearing physically for me in light forms. And there's been other people who've sat in on the channeling sessions, and they always refer to me as Rose or Oletta. So I just took it when I legally changed my name as Rose as my first name and Oletta as my last name, even though it's kind of redundant.
Interchangeable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I would like you to know, sometimes you like to check in on our guests while you're listening. Her website is oraclerose.com.
It's also roseoletta.com. I have
okay.
both. Yeah.
Certainly. Okay. Rose Oletta, and it's OLETTA.
Yeah.
1 L, 2 T's.
Perfect.
So, okay. Wow. Well, would it be appropriate to ask now how you differentiate between oracle, seer, and spiritual medium?
Yeah. So when I first moved to Colorado and I joined the psychic development group, I considered myself a psychic. And like I said, I'd always been intuitive and I had psychic phenomenon happen. And so I just called myself a psychic and assumed I was a psychic. But then when I went to this group, I started doing mediumship, and I didn't understand what that was and what the difference was.
Right.
So a psychic is someone who picks up information energetically. And so there's many, many ways to do this. You can do this by reading auras. You can do this, a lot of people will do some type of a divination tool like runes or tarot cards or angel cards. Some people will just tap into a person's auric field and receive information through the different psychic senses, which I'm sure you've spoken about in your show before. Mm-hmm. Whereas a medium is connecting with a different energy of a being in another realm or dimension. And generally the way we think of this in the language we use is with a loved one who's crossed over. But the way I use the word medium is the in-between. Yes. I'm the in between this physical world and the different dimensions and realms in the outer worlds. So, and I become that kind of vessel in between to interpret and translate the messages. So that's the way that I use the word medium. When my guides came to me, they said, do not call yourself a psychic anymore because your abilities are more along the lines of an oracle, a seer, or a medium. And so I asked them, what does that mean? And I think a lot of people get caught in the language, and there's so many people who use different terminology. Some insist it has to be psychic medium. Some say that's redundant. Why would you say that? It should just be medium. I mean, I've heard in the workshops and things I've done, I've heard so many different, very opinionated beliefs about this thing. And really, it's just language. It's just language. And a lot of my clients come to me that have very strong religious backgrounds. And some of the religious texts specifically say, don't go to a medium. And so they have a lot of fear around that. And again, I remind people that these ancient texts were written in different languages, and those words meant different things to them. So I actually asked my own guides during a channeling session what it meant when it said, do not see mediums. And they said, are you speaking to dead bodies that you've risen from a grave? I said, no, absolutely not.
Like zombies.
Yeah. And they said, because, that was a form of, I guess, kind of a, I don't know the right word for it, but back in the biblical days, there were people who were doing that. And there were people who were summoning demons and summoning, the lower vibrational beings, and yes. So that's what they were warning against. But then,
no doubt that would be kind of freakish, like
and so that's for sure I'm against and not into. That's definitely not what I do. But at the same time, during those days, the Bible talks about prophets and seers, and God sent messengers, and even the word messenger in Hebrew is Malachi, and it means messenger or angel. So I always say, messenger doesn't only mean angelic beings. There's spirit guides too. There's ascended masters. There's beings in higher realms and higher heavens that God sends to communicate with us. And so there's really nothing to have fear about when you're communicating with the higher beings. And so anyways, an oracle is someone that communicates with these higher beings. So any of the ascended masters, or what a lot of people term as gods or goddesses, like Ganesh, or the Norse gods Freya, or there's a lot of different beings that come from many, many different cultural legends that are actual beings in the higher realms. And that's who I communicate with and receive messages from.
Oh, that's interesting. So I guess I'm an oracle too, because I do
Yes.
that
Yeah.
too.
Exactly.
When I was in the Pentecostal church in my 20s, I remember getting a message, and at that time I thought of it directly from God because I didn't differentiate angels and spirit guides and God and goddesses and, ancestors. It was just sort of a collective knowledge of
Yes.
things. And they used the term prophet, and I didn't ever tell anyone that. In fact, right now is probably the only time that I've ever acknowledged that publicly,
Yeah.
because I was sort of like, what, a prophet? That sounds kind of fancy. You know what I mean? Like, and crazy, to
Yeah.
be like egotistical or something. But that's very interesting.
Well, and I felt the same way. And I actually do healings as well. And, I had to kind of come out of my medium closet in stages along the way. And even
Yes.
as far as doing healings, I only came out recently last year because, I have gotten into, unfortunately, a lot of hard conversations with people with very strong religious beliefs. And I've been called a lot of names along the way. And
Yeah.
a lot of people will say,
Yes.
how dare you say you can heal? And I say, well, I don't heal. I allow the Holy Spirit to come through me and heal.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
And
not
that's
us
what,
anyway, right? Like,
exactly. And that's what Jesus taught. So everything Jesus taught, he said that we can do. And that's what
yes.
I'm doing. And this is my path. And I have to speak the truth. Even just today, actually, I had somebody say, why don't you tell people you talk to God? Why do you say that you talk to angels and ascended masters and spirit guides? And they said, a lot of more people will receive you better if you just say you talk to God. And I said, well, I do talk to God on a daily basis, but when I'm receiving messages, it's not the truth to
There's a
say,
specific
yeah,
source. And also, isn't there that whole thing that is biblical? Because I used to teach Bible study actually
uh-huh,
about, if we were to see the face of God, we would die because we wouldn't
yeah,
be able to handle the vibration. And there is a gradation of vibrations. And I don't know. I mean, I know we do speak directly to God too, but I kind of think of it like there are these layers of beings that are going from denser, as in the physical plane, and
that's
lower
right.
vibrational on up, on up, on up. And, you know, it's not it's not saying that it's an intercessor or an intermediary. It's just, if God is everywhere and there is no place that God is not,
Right.
then truth is embedded literally in everything. So the source of that, you can get it from any source, but it's important to be accurate in the
Right.
description and way, because there are differentiations in personality and vibrations and tones.
Absolutely. Well, and even in the biblical text, God sent messengers, and not just the biblical text, in lots of different religious texts. God
Yes,
sent messengers
yes.
to us, and
Yeah.
he still does. That's still people think just because it happened 2,000 years ago that it doesn't happen anymore. No, it still happens.
No, there's nothing new
Even
under the sun.
even the Mother Mary, God sent an angel to tell her she would be carrying the
Yes.
Christ child. It wasn't God directly speaking to her, but there are situations where God does speak directly, and I'm not, in any way minimizing or negating that. But for me, if I'm talking to a particular being, I'm going to say that's who I'm talking to. I'm
Absolutely.
not going to sugarcoat that in any way. But
Yeah.
that kind of gets into the difference about spirit and soul. And when spirit first explained all of this to me, I didn't understand it. I just thought it was an interchangeable word. And they said, God creates the spirit creates the souls, and the souls create the bodies. And that goes for all planets and dimensions. That's the way it works. So when these beings come to me and I call them spirit, a lot of people don't understand what that means. And a lot of people say, oh, you speak to spirit, that's scary or dangerous, and they think that that's some type of ghost or demonic force. And no, when I say I talk to spirit, that means those beings or essences carry the divine spark of God within them.
I love it. That's what I do. Sparks of divine light. That's my
Yeah.
philosophy too. Yes.
Yeah. And there's just different forms and expressions of that, and the way that I kind of have explained it to people in the past is, imagine God as this huge ocean. And if you took a drop of that ocean and you scattered that around into different cups, that's still part of that same ocean, but now
Right.
they're in different form in different places.
Right.
Some might have more of that ocean in it, and some might have a little bit, but it's all the same. It's all from that ocean. And
Right.
that's kind of what we are as spirit.
I know in classical literature like C.W. Ledbetter and maybe Manly P. Hall, I'm not sure, those turn of the century writers, they talked about our many bodies. And
Yes.
think of them, they do go from less dense to more dense, sort of like the phases of water, like evaporation, precipitation, and actual water, and then into ice, which is a solid state, and they each have their properties, but they're all comprised of the same element.
That's right. Well, and another thing that I say is, if I can talk to you on this earth in the physical form and you carry spirit, why can't I still talk to you when you're in energetic form in carrying that same spirit?
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, matter is neither created nor destroyed, like energy is neither created or destroyed. So,
but somehow people have a lot of fear around mediums communicating with spirit on the other side. They think it's okay to talk here in the physical body, but once they leave the physical body, all of a sudden it becomes scary. And I try and explain it's still the same spirit. It's just taken form. They're in a different vehicle now, but it's the same spirit.
Yeah, and it's kind of heartbreaking to think that people might feel that way, because the people that are in spirit need our connection and our interface just as much as the people left behind, because they need to let them know details that were left undone or
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because majority of the readings that I do, it's because there are messages that spirit need and want to get across to their loved ones. And a lot of times they come through and talk about regrets they had, or advice for their loved ones about, living life to the fullest and appreciating what they had, things that they didn't understand in the physical. Sometimes it's about healing hurts or things that happened within their family. There's so much healing that takes place on both sides, and there's a reason for that. I have asked my own guides about that, and it's because when a spirit crosses to what a lot of people call the other side, it's kind of a general term. Where is that? That was one of the first questions I asked in my training as a medium. Where is the other side? Is this heaven? Is this, where the heck is it? And my guides explained to me that there's different realms, and it's kind of like what you were saying. There's kind of a hierarchy, and that's the point of ascension. That's why we're here.
But they're also permeable barriers, because once you open yourself to even a curiosity about a higher realm, boom, you're there. It's not like we think of time and space and, levels of a building or something like that.
Right.
But it's much more fluid.
Fluid, yes.
Yes. Miss Rose Oletta, we're going to talk to you on the other half of the hour. Again, her website is roseoletta.com or oraclerose.com. We'll be right back.
Now, back to our show, from a medium's perspective, with host, Reverend Tracey Lockwood.
Welcome back. If you missed the first half of the show, or you would like to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find them on YouTube. And if you're there, please subscribe to my channel, Medium Tracey Lockwood. We were talking about the other side and what that was.
I thought it was great that we both ended on the same word of fluid. a little help from spirit on the other side helping us with that. I just wanted to add, we're here for a reason, that we come to this planet as an incarnation. And a lot of people feel that this is life, and when we die, that's the afterlife. But in reality, we're eternal beings that are just constantly transitioning. And this is just one of the many afterlife realms that there are. Earth is an afterlife realm. And this is a place that we come as a school of great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to break a lot of karmic patterns, to heal our souls, to help others. It's a fantastic opportunity, and souls literally line up around the galaxy to have an opportunity to experience this realm and this place. And once we leave our physical bodies here and transition into the other realms, the whole process is that process of ascension, and there's purpose to it. It's as we heal each level of our soul, we ascend to a higher level and a higher level until eventually we get to be closer and closer and closer to our Creator. And that's, the kind of the process of why we keep doing this over and over again. A lot of people will say, I hear this all the time, I know this is my last life, I'm done with this, I never want to come back to this place. And I, believe me, as someone with the path of a wounded healer, I understand that. I really do. But at the same time, it's such an honor to be here in a physical body. And
it is.
And
it is.
When you transition into other realms and you don't have that physical body, there's things that we take for granted, like, the pleasure of eating food, or the smell of flowers, or the physical touch of our loved ones. I mean, there's so many blessings about being on this very physical planet. And I think that a lot of people get so caught in the darkness and the hardship here that they forget that coming here really is an opportunity.
Yeah, it is. And, it's also the realm of miracles, because where else, like, when you're out of body, things are very quickly manifested. If you want to see what Pluto looks like before the second syllable comes out
you're
of
there.
your mouth, you're there. And so the resistance and separateness of this dimension is operating under different laws. It's sort of like we were talking about the phases of water. Ice operates under certain properties that are held in place to create that chilling needed to make it solid. And it isn't as fluid as its evaporative state, but there are certain purposes for ice and things that are good for us. And,
That's right.
Miracles, to me, a miracle is when a thought becomes a thing, where we can create something from just an idea and then be able to touch it later, to be able to
That's
manifest.
right.
I think that's just...
Well, we're created in the likeness of our Creator. We are creator beings, and
Yes.
we come here and we forget. We have this is the realm where we get amnesia and we forget who we are.
Yes.
But there's great opportunity and blessing in that. In that this is an opportunity for us to have faith. And it's, when people are just kind of handed something, they don't appreciate it in the same way as when you've maybe had to earn it or realize it on your own. And that's kind of what we're done here, is we're tested with love and faith to know that we can heal ourselves here. We can manifest what we need, that even though we can't see the support that's around us in the spiritual realms, we are so supported. If you could only physically see what I'm sure you, Tracey, and I see energetically with the plant beings on this planet, the animal beings, the angelic beings, those in spirit. I mean, we are just engulfed in love around us, but we have that separation where we can't physically see it. We just have to have that faith that we are supported, that love connects us still, even though we don't have that conscious memory.
And I do believe that when we need to access those portions of ourself that help us survive some of the more difficult hardships, that there's always something. There's always a way through.
Yes.
And if not, if it ends in something, a tragedy that is unpreventable by our own efforts or written into our contract, we aren't done. We are still alive. We still exist. And one of the things I'm always touched by is the love and compassion that souls or spirits are received by on the other side, that they're given time to adjust, to acclimate, to heal the wounds of their perception and their minds. Our bodies, of course, are free, so we don't have any impediments there, but that healing process that we experience, and not everybody needs that. Some of us zoom right back over and bypass some of the lower ones anyway.
It's interesting that you say that. Part of my path in in becoming a medium and understanding what a medium is that I lost my own father when I was 2 years old. And he died during a very tragic accident. And my mom and I had actually gone to psychics and mediums my whole life trying to make contact with him. And we never, ever did. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s, we went to go see one of your, I guess, fellow alumni, John Holland, a very well-known medium who trained at Arthur Findlay. And he brought my father through. And there was great purpose in the timing of that. But what had happened is my father had been in kind of what I like to call a cocooning stage, or a healing phase on the other side, where he needed that time to acclimate and to just kind of experience what he needed to heal from and experience during that phase, and although they don't have time in the way that we do here on earth, that's where his soul was kind of at during this process. But for me, it was a great opportunity in that timing, because it was the first time I had ever experienced evidential mediumship. And I was blown away. I mean, he literally, my mom was so nervous to stand up when he was doing the reading. It was a gallery form of reading. And he literally listed maybe 20 very specific facts. And then finally, my mother's name's Olivia, but he ended up calling out, "Is there a Mickey here?" Which is the nickname that my dad had for my mom that no one would have known.
That's beautiful.
So he literally called her by name, and at that point I'm like, "Mom, we got to do this."
That's so good.
But I felt it was such a gift from my father on the other side, because my father could see my path as a medium long before I could.
Yes.
And that was his gift to let me know. And even though a lot of the messages were from my mom and there wasn't a whole lot specifically for me, it was in witnessing the evidence that solidified for me without a shadow of a doubt that my dad's existence still continued.
Yeah, that is a tremendous example there. Yeah, for me, I don't have trouble connecting with people, whether they're pre-transition, in their transition, immediately past. You're probably the same, right?
Yeah, I don't.
You differentiate so many different types of beings. A lot of people that work as mediums may have one main guide that they work with. Nothing wrong with that, but I like the diversity and identifying that diversity. And you too, I know.
I think it's important to know who you're talking to. And along my path in my workshops and things, I've come across a lot of people who, are teaching mediumship, or who are very high, well-known mediums, and they don't even know what the realms are. They don't even know who they're talking to. They can't differentiate the beings that they're talking to, which there are lower vibrational beings. There are such things as trickster spirits. There are, people come through. And in fact, when Ganesh first came to me, that was one of the first things he said. And I got a little bit of a scolding. He said, "Do you know who you're talking to?" And I said, "Well, of course I do." And he said, "So if somebody comes to you and you tell them that their grandma is doing fine and their grandma's in the heaven, is that the truth?" And I said, "Well, I think it is." And this is very early on in my career. And he said, "No." He said, "Sometimes you're talking to trickster spirits. And how do you know? How do you know the difference?"
Right.
So I got a heavy schooling from my guides about that, because I wasn't even aware. And I think very innocently, no disrespect to other mediums out there, but I think it's something that unless you're trained by spirit or somebody who knows these things, you very innocently don't even understand the process of what you're doing.
It's natural to relate to the information you get. If somebody goes past that level of intuitive stuff where they're like, "I see the color green," and they're able to interpret that or whatever, being able to deepen the messages, it may not be the information isn't accurate. It could be that it's just not deep enough, or they can jump to a conclusion. They might get a vibration or a memory of their own, because spirit uses what we know, and then they jump to a conclusion and start kind of raining down advice that's based on what happened to them rather than the particular
or projections, and
that's projecting. That's it. That's the word.
And a lot of people, and this is why the way I do readings, I don't allow people to come with me to come to me with questions in the beginning, because a lot of times what will happen is people are projecting what they want to hear. And because we're energetic beings, we're constantly emitting a signal. I can pick up on those projections, and I don't want to give somebody a false reading or a false session because I'm picking up on what they're projecting towards me.
Oh,
So
that's interesting. We work exactly opposite, because now I require people to make a list, but I do it because I don't want to be a performance. I want them, and I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying like my style, your style.
oh yeah, we all work
But the
differently. Sure.
reason that I do that is I don't want to be there with them detached, looking at me like I'm going to do something for them.
Yeah.
You know, I want them involved in constructing the, what is it that you
So
do want to look at, and be specific. Doesn't mean
I do
that
that generally.
information
Yeah,
doesn't come
I
through.
totally get what you're saying about
Yeah.
that. I do that towards the middle or half of my reading or my session. And
Uh-huh.
the reason I do that, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I want spirit to come through, because
Uh-huh.
spirit knows far better than I do.
Oh, absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so what ends up happening is, and this happens to me, I'd say probably 99.9% of the time, is spirit has answered every single question on their list before
Yes.
they even get to it.
Yeah, that happens
And that
too. That does happen
yeah.
for me too.
And I think that's fantastic,
yeah.
because that lets people know that their guides are there and hear everything they say long before we've ever connected on the phone call.
Mhm.
And, and two, like I said, spirit knows what they're doing. It's way better if I just kind of step out of the way and let them do the thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like maybe it just helps them feel like they have to participate a little bit too, that it's not a show. And
Oh, yeah.
that, and yes, yeah, often someone will show up before they even come through the door, like
Oh, yeah.
maternal grandmother's here, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, which they
I-
don't expect because they had to prepare their list.
Oh, exactly. I had a funny thing, actually. I do a lot of times I'll go to people's houses and do kind of a family session. And so I was driving. It was kind of a long drive, probably about an hour and a half. And I had this woman come to me, and she started talking to me in the car, and she told me she had died of cancer, and she was headed to this, I was headed to this home. She told me that she would be making things go off in the house, that that she would be making
Some
noises
activity.
just to let them know that they were there. So when I walk into the room, the very first thing I said is, your loved one, your mother, came to me, and this is what she said. And she said she'd be making things go off. All of a sudden the oven started beeping, and it just went off all night long, and they'd just go off, and they'd close the timer, and then bam, again it would go off, and all night long. It was just fantastic, to have that type of interaction, to let their loved ones know that she was there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as we talked earlier about the evidence proving that you're talking to the person through their mannerisms, sometimes their names, sometimes a memory or a quote or whatever. Yeah, it's so, isn't it exciting?
It really is exciting. And for me, it's really important because, like I said, my first experience with a really, really solid evidential medium was he had listed 20 specific things and then called my mom by her private nickname.
That
and
was
to me,
so perfect.
That changed my life. It blew me away. And like I said, it wasn't even the messages from my dad. It was the fact that medium standing, 500 feet from us on a stage could relay so many specific facts. That solidified that my dad was the one up there talking.
Yes, it does create a confidence in. Yes,
and
absolutely.
and no offense to people on how they do their different styles, and a lot of people are very trusting and intuitive themselves. So when they go to see a medium, they don't need the evidence because they can feel it or know.
It's not, me personally, because of that, when I get a reading, I don't want 20 or 40 proofs. All they need to say is, some 2-3 things, and I know whether they're on it or not. Do you know what?
But I tend, totally. And I've done readings for very intuitive people and for mediums, and they don't need that. And usually, my guides they know what needs to be said and doesn't. Like I said, I'm just best to get out of the way.
Yeah, but it's great to be able to do that, because some people do kind of,
they do need it. I get a lot of skeptics,
maybe. Yes. Yeah. And a skeptic isn't necessarily someone who won't believe it. It's just someone who needs, could you show me some evidence of that first?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't let people test me. Like, Do not,
No.
do not walk through my door and ask me
No.
what the pet name your dad called you is,
I've
because
had
that's a
I've had people
challenge.
do
Do you know
that.
what I
Yeah.
mean? And I don't like the attitude of like,
No.
prove yourself to me and then I'll take you at your word. I
Yeah.
don't do this for entertainment. I do this
No.
because it's a calling and it's the highest honor for me to connect
Absolutely.
with people.
That's
And the
why
same for you too. Yes, this is a profession. This is not some
for me, it's
little,
not even, it's a
yeah,
purpose. It's a mission.
a
It's something
mission,
that,
a life
yeah,
calling. Yes,
my spirit stood before God and agreed that this would be my mission in life. So I take
yes,
it very, 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 very
it
seriously.
is.
And I really, to be honest, and no disrespect, but I really don't need anyone's validation or approval because this,
Exactly. That's where I am. Yep.
yeah,
It's like, okay, I don't
it
care.
just is.
Maybe you'll get there someday.
Exactly. Right.
Well, we have just a few minutes left in the show, and I know some of our listeners are developing their own abilities. And you had mentioned you had some ideas about something you might like to share with them to help them do something kind of cool. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the most important things when you're developing your gifts is, like I said, to know who you're working with. And so I think it's very important, and a lot of people want this too, is to know who your own spirit guide is. And now people they have spirit guides, and your spirit guides can be somebody who have been with you since the moment you were born till the day you die. Sometimes they change depending on different things that you're experiencing or going through in your life. You may have guides that help you with certain things. One guide might help you to be a better parent. One guide might help you to write a book. There's different purposes.
Yes.
So this kind of exercise that I want to share is something that you can do more than once, because you will have different guides come to you at different times. Sometimes you'll have the same guide come over and over again, but either way, you'll always receive a message and have that connection. So do we have time to walk through that, or would
We
you like
do.
me?
We've got
Okay.
about 3 minutes,
Perfect.
or
So
maybe 2 to 3 minutes. So you do what you would wish. Yes.
So perfect. So if everyone listening just wants to just kind of get comfortable in their seat, start taking a few slow, deep breaths and just kind of get comfortable in a relaxed position. I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just envision a beautiful white light coming down from the ceiling, engulfing your entire body. As this white light touches you, it relaxes every muscle within your body. This is the divine white light of source that connects you to all that is. This connects you to the divine source of love of your creator. Now, in your mind's eye, I want you to envision a beautiful staircase in front of you. The staircase can look any way that your mind envisions it. When you're ready, I want you to begin taking a step onto the first step. As you step onto the staircase, it relaxes you even deeper. Go ahead as you feel comfortable and continue walking up this staircase, with each step relaxing you more and more. At the top of the staircase, you see a beautiful door. When you feel ready, put your hand on the door and gently open it. As you open this door, you see a lush and beautiful valley with a path right at your footsteps. Step onto this path now and begin slowly walking, taking in the beautiful flowers, the gentle breeze, the sun shining down on you. In the distance, you see a beautiful mountain, and in front of that mountain is a gorgeous green valley. All of a sudden, you hear the noise of an animal. As you walk a little further down the path, the noise of the animal becomes a little bit louder. What animal is this? You look now to the left to the valley, and you see this animal approaching you. It comes to you now with a message. This is your animal spirit guide. What message does this animal have for you?
Thanks.
Take a moment now to thank that animal and walk down the path a little further until you see a bench. Go ahead and take a seat on this bench. And as you sit down, you see another being approaching you. This is your main spirit guide. Allow the appearance of that guide to become more clear to you now. You can ask any questions or ask the name.
Rose, thank you. And for our
Sure,
listeners, you can find Rose again at oraclerose.com, and you can find me at mediumtracylockwood.com. And please remember, it is never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.